All right, welcome to the Hall of Fame Fatherhood Podcast. I'm your host, Steve Mistovich, and today I'm joined by Jerry Adams. Jerry is a leader in the steel industry, a husband and father, and the founder of Men of Grit. Jerry, welcome. Thanks for joining me today.
You bet, Steve. It's good to be here, man. We've been working hard to try to get this together.
Yeah.
Had a number of things getting in the way, but here we are, and I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So, doing research, to bring this conversation to light, looking at your website, you have your dad's funeral service on there. And that's the first time I've ever seen that on a website. And it kind of struck me, for fathers, I live an hour away from the NFL Hall of Fame in Canton. Fathers aren't going to get a bust in some hall that people are going to go visit, right? And so I was thinking, Hall of Fame Fatherhood podcast. And I think that our highest aim or our highest confirmation that we can receive as fathers is that our children somehow publicly are willing and can express the lessons that the fathers have imparted on them. And you've done that. What better way to honor your father than publicly put on your website, the lessons and your father's service. So it was just really cool to see that you were willing to share that with the world. Whoever comes across your website will see that. And I just thought it was an amazing way to honor your father. So obviously he's left a huge, huge impression on you. And,
yeah. And it's February 15th, 2021. He passed away at 1:15 a.m. I think it was. And I was there, my dad, I posted it on my blog, menofgrit.blog. It's there for anybody that wants to listen to that. That was a tough day, but I was very proud to share what I shared. It's an emotional thing for me. I was very close with my dad. My dad was, and I talk about it in there, and I talk about how my dad was my hero. I didn't have to look past, I didn't have to look. I think I say in there, he was like my John Wayne and my Clint Eastwood. He was my hero. And my dad was really good at developing boys into men. And he did that in many ways. He was a coach and he did a lot of different things, but my brother and I, we were the recipients of that. And we saw the way he lived and he taught us, how to be men. And he raised us. We were raised on a farm. We didn't have a whole lot. Our first summer there, I took Baz in the creek and it was funny because we grew up not having a whole lot, but my brother and I talk about it all the time. Like, we didn't realize that we didn't have a whole lot, we visited friends of ours and they had dirt floors, and we would walk away from there and my brother and I would be talking. We'd be like, man, those dudes are really poor, man. Not realizing that we didn't have, running water at the time in our house, and my dad was remodeling this old 200-year-old farmhouse. And so, but he was like this legend to a lot of people, when he bought that place, you couldn't live in the house. And so he lived in a tent in the winter in Pennsylvania. And while he was remodeling that, we stayed at our grandparents' house. And so this was the guy that, he lived in a place where there was a biker gang there and all that. And he had some interactions with these guys and they respected him. And,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think they just looked at it and said, man, the dude's living in a tent in the winter.
Right.
He's got a big old beard. And at that time, a movie came out that was called The Life and Times of Grizzly Adams.
Okay.
And having the last name of Adams and him having a big beard, like he looked like Grizzly Adams. And so,
okay.
The guys at work, they gave him this nickname, Grizzly Adams, which became Grizz. And there were many people that knew him as Grizz and didn't even know his real name. That's how they knew him. And so he had this, he kind of had this almost like legendary status with a lot of people. And, but he really, he really zeroed in on my brother and I and raising us in a way that we would become good men. And, he would do this in a lot of different ways. We got in trouble like a lot of boys do, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're wild and you got all this testosterone, so you're out doing all kinds of things that you shouldn't be doing. And then we played sports and different things like that. But when we ran up against trouble, my dad would never go address things for us. He would coach us on the side and we would have to go and sit down face to face, whether it was with a police officer or, hey, we had a problem with a coach that we need, we felt like we weren't getting a fair shot or whatever. Right. And, my dad made us have those conversations, eyeball to eyeball, face to face, work it out ourselves and struggle through doing it the right way, the wrong way, and there were so many things like that my dad did that I think it made us grow up and be men. And I think about how important that was. Like today, I'm not afraid to confront the hard issues because I was raised that way. He was a good father. He had this vision. He understood what it took to be a good man in the world. And so as we were being raised, he would teach us things. Like he would teach us how to work. He would teach us how to, just like I just described, face things, go eyeball to eyeball with another man, face up to the things. If we dug ourselves in a hole, all right, you dig yourself out.
Face the music.
Yeah, face the music, and I think about it today and I think, man, if we as fathers, if we would do that for our sons, in one generation, we would square away a lot of problems that we have in today's world.
But,
so
like, it's in saying that, like there are things going wrong, as we can all see. And like another point that stuck with me was like not being afraid to get your hands dirty, dirt on other fingernails.
Oh yeah.
And with the technological advances, just all the changes, like one that's less and less needed, like literally needed. So in a world that is not really incentivized and not really looked at as a good thing or the way things should be done, like how do you, as a father, instill that, in today's society, I guess would be the simplest question.
I do it a lot, I do it a lot the same way I saw my dad do. I tell a story. I remember we were doing this building project. We were building these kennels for our dogs. So we had to do some cinder block work. And so my brother and I we were little. We were probably, I don't know, 6 and 8, something like that. 6 years old, 8 years old. My dad had us carrying the cinder blocks. So we would move the cinder blocks from the truck over to where he was doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I think about that now and I think, what kind of patience would that take? Right. Because imagine, you know, and I mean, there were times they were the bigger blocks, right? So, you know, I would grab on the edge of the one side and my brother would grab on the edge of the other. And here we are, two little dudes moving one cinder block at a time. And I'm thinking, I think back on that now, you know, then I was like, he was instilling in us. And then when we would start sweating, he would tell us how cool it was that we were sweating. He's like, man, it's cool to sweat. It's a good thing to sweat. And so we had this thing in our mind. It's like, you're not working until you're sweat. Mm-hmm. And so you had that. And I think back about how patient, you know, here he is building a building project, and it probably took 4 times longer because we were helping. Mm-hmm. But again, his thought process was long-term, not short-term. So I think about that now today with my son. You know, one of the things that has been instilled in me is example. Example is key. As far as being a father, first we need to be who we want them to become. You know, if it's a son, it's who do I want this young man to become? I need to be that man. That's who I need to be. You know, maybe it's a daughter. I don't have any daughters, but I would just from talking to other men, fathers that have daughters, it's who's the man that you want your daughter to marry one day. Be that man, right? Be the example. Example is, I think, the most powerful thing that we can do as fathers. Be the example. And so I think about that now. We have a property here in Virginia. We got about 5.5 acres or whatever. And, you know, I pay some guys to do some work around here every once in a while, but I do a lot of work myself. Okay. Like we got things, you know, you get 5.5 acres. It's an old house. So there's always something to do. There's always something to fix. There's always something, you know, going on and to take care of the property. So, you know, it can be, you know, we got a couple trees that fall down. And so we're cranking up the chainsaw and, you know, we got a 4-wheeler and we're cutting wood. We're splitting wood. We're stacking it up in a 4-wheeler. We're taking it over and stacking it, you know. And so it's that kind of stuff that hey, bud, we got some work to do on Saturday morning. Let's get the work done. Once we get the work done, we can do whatever we want to do. Right. So we'll get out there and we'll, you know, I take a little speaker out and let him play whatever music he wants to play. We crank that up and we start running a chainsaw and splitting wood and stacking wood and doing that kind of stuff. So that's, you know, I look for those kinds of things and I try to do some of that work so that, you know, he sees that example, you know. Yeah. And that's just the work side, you know, that's that piece. But I think you need to be purposeful about those kinds of things, you know. It's like engage them in those kinds of things. And he's looking to buy an old car right now. He likes old things. He's kind of an old soul and he likes old things. And so he's looking to buy an old car. Well, if you know anything about old cars, there's always going to be work. Yeah. You know? Yeah. So that's going to be something where, you know, it's something he likes, plus he can learn, you know, how to work, how to, you know, get grease under his fingernails and I think there's something really good about that, you know, and, you know, and it doesn't have to be those physical things. Maybe it might be a project or something, you know, if your kid's maybe he's into computers and it's, hey, I want to build a computer, right? Or I want to make a computer program or whatever, you know, whatever it is they're into, you go and you do that thing. You know.
Yeah. No, I like that. It's, and to hear you say, like, you can tell you're very intentional with that lesson, you know, just the small gesture of like letting your son crank up whatever music that he wants to, because it's not like Dad's way or the highway.
Yeah.
Type of thing, you know, what everything is Dad's way. Like just giving him that little bit of autonomy or choice, you know, just points out to me like how intentional you are.
Yeah, and he, you know, he drives the 4-wheeler,
mm-hmm.
you know, and you just pick some things that hey, he can do. And you know, it's really cool when you give him something that it's almost like a little bit too early.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like if he's really young and you're kind of looking at him and you're thinking, well, he's kind of driven the 4-wheeler with me next to him a few times or whatever. And then one day you're just like, you know, and some days you may pay for this, but you know, it gets him excited when you say, here, you give him the keys and say, go start up the 4-wheeler and bring it out here.
Yeah.
You know, and you can start that when they're young, and then they get excited about helping Dad, and they get excited about doing work.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, last year I redid my landscaping and had to pull out a bunch of trees and roots and rented a tractor. And I took the week off of work. And so it was just me and my 6-year-old, and having him help me drive the tractor, dig holes, you know, even though he didn't get very far, you know, he was still digging and, you know, moving rock and all that stuff. And it was a really good week. Like not only the satisfaction of physically completing something that was hard, but having him there with me, it was a lot of fun to have him there.
Yeah. So, there's a bond. And I think, you know, men in general, they tend to bond over doing something.
Mm-hmm.
Like we typically don't just sit around and talk, right? We usually do something, and in the process of doing something, we talk and we engage, right? Mm-hmm. But it's almost like we have to have something to do. And if we can do something together where we're accomplishing something together, even better. You know, my son and I, we do backpacking, and we do some big hikes. We've gone out to the Rocky Mountains and we've done some hikes and things like that. Some of our best times and some of our best conversations are when we're on a trail hiking. And, you know, I always say, you know, you can come home and, you know, your son might come home from school and, you know, hey, bud, how was the day? Good. How'd everything go? All right.
Yeah.
Okay. You know, these are the answers you get. But you go and you do something like you're walking a trail or something like that. That's where we talk about old cars. And then we talk about things that are going on in the world. And, you know, how do we, you know, what do you think about this? And how's that align? You know, what's our position on this issue and that kind of stuff. So you have these, it seems like those conversations become a lot deeper when you're doing something together. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's how it's been with my son anyway. You got to figure that out. You got to figure out, you know, what makes him click, what makes him open up, and then you can engage in that, you know. So, and my dad was really good at that. You know, he made everything an adventure. He was good at making memories, and he, you know, so that's something that's, I think, is instilled in me and my brother. Is that we, you know, we look for ways to just make things more of an adventure, you know? So I write that in one of the articles. A whole group of us went to play paintball one time.
Okay.
And it was a 2-hour drive. And all the guys I ran around with, they were all outdoorsmen. We all hunted. We spent a lot of time in the woods. And so, you know, we were pumped about going to play paintball against some other team. And so my dad, he had this idea. He said, hey, I want you all to come to our place, and I want you to have all your camo on, and we're going to use face paint and everything. And then we had like 4 Jeeps with the tops off. And he had a buddy who had a Harley with a sidecar.
Okay.
And so all of us, his buddy, him, all of us guys, we were all camoed up with our face paint in 4 Jeeps with tops off, and that, that motorcycle with a sidecar. And we drove 2 hours up there. So you can imagine with a bunch of guys like that, by the time we got there, there was nobody that was going to beat us. Because we were psyched up.
Yeah, you were ready to go.
Like, yeah, and so he did that stuff as a coach and all that. He always figured out a way to get people excited and make a memory. Like it's a, you know, and I'm still talking about it, you know, and it's a memory. And you know, when somebody like my dad, when, you know, my dad passed, you know, that was a gift that he gave us. He created these memories, and those are gifts. When somebody passes that you really love, you know, that's a gift that they give you. Those good memories. And as fathers, I think we need to be thinking, you know, I think just in general, fathers, leadership, whatever, you know, you're always going to be better off thinking long term. You're going to make better decisions if you think long term as opposed to short term, you know, because short term often tends to be the easiest. You know, short term is going to be, I'll carry my own cinder blocks rather than have an 8-year-old and a 6-year-old carry it.
Exactly.
Right. But long term, I'm going to make these guys, you know, they're going to become men that have a strong work ethic. And because of that, they're going to be successful in life. So what's the best decision, right? It's to make that long-term decision that is very difficult in the short term. But we as fathers, you know, when we talk about that with memories, it's, you know, if we make these memories, we think about today. Hey, I'm a memory maker. So what am I doing today? How am I doing things today to build this memory? You know, I want my son one day to be able to think, man, my dad, you know, he's a little crazy sometimes, but he made things fun. You know, we really had a good time. And while having a good time, he instilled some strong values in me that have helped me in life. And that's the kind of legacy that you want, right? You want to have a legacy that your son looks to you and says, man, my dad taught me a lot of really good things that have helped me in life. And I can say that with my dad. You know, he did those things for me that I'm grateful for.
Yeah, and a lot of gold in there in what you just said. Very powerful. You touched on something that I was going to bring up anyway, but you said in your speech at your dad's service that he would craft the message like specific to you, and you actually gave instructions to like his grandchildren's to write it down if there's something that's stuck. And you know, the words that you use are very powerful. How do you use that in your life as a father, as a leader?
Yeah. You know, he had this ability to understand people. He had this ability to quickly figure out like what made different people click. Like he could figure out, you know, he could understand, he could look at a person and get to know them pretty quickly and understand this is the approach this person needs. This one in this particular situation needs encouragement. This one needs a little kick in the backside to get them on the right path. Right. And he could tell like what you needed, you know, and he was really good at that. And I know there were times in my life that I was mad at him because of something he said. And then later I realized that's exactly the kicking ass I needed. You know, I needed that because I was being a bonehead and I wasn't making the right decisions, or I wasn't moving forward in an area that I needed to move forward in. And he'd tell me about it, you know, and he would give me that push. And then other times, you know, where he just understood that I was hurting, and this wasn't the time to pile on. This was the time to let me know that, hey man, here are the reasons why you're going to dig yourself out of this. Here's why you're, you know. And so he understood how to encourage. And then he took that down to like different people. I talked about the grandkids and everything, because he would think long and hard, you know, if somebody in his life had something going on, he would think about those things. He was a thinker, and he would think about, what is it that this person, so he would take on their burdens and think about what's the best strategy in life for this person. And then he would come and speak those things into people's lives. And, you know, so, and he had a really good relationship with a lot of different people, grandkids especially. He would understand, hey, this one needs this one isn't getting the encouragement that he needs for this, so that's where he would zero in. This one's having a hard time in school, so this is what he needs to hear. And so he was really good at that. So for me, you know, I try to think about that. I don't know, you know, I try to do that same thing. I see that a lot, certainly with my son. I see it a lot in leading at work. Like, I know some guys, they are, you know, depending on their makeup or whatever, they're the types of guys that I got to pull the reins back every once in a while on them, because they're, you know, they're all boom, boom, boom. And I love that. Right. And then other guys, they're, you know, you can tell that in these areas, they're really, really strong. In these areas, they're not as sure of themselves. So they just need a little bit of encouragement. They just need to, hey, tell me what you're thinking. And they tell me what they're thinking. And I'd say, you know, that's a really good idea. You should do that. Go ahead. That's perfect. That's exactly what needs to be done. Go ahead. Good plan. Make it happen. And you can see it on them. You can see them gain confidence as you're talking to them.
Right.
You know, and so that's something that that I think somewhere along the line, I picked that up from my dad, that ability to be able to do that. You know, I don't think I do it perfectly every time. I think we are all a work in progress, right? But I've learned how to do that over the years. And some things, they feel like they come naturally, but I think a lot of that's because of the way my dad raised us. Like, he taught us things that we didn't even realize he was teaching us, leadership lessons. We were just like, well, this is just the way you live. This is how you do things in life. And then it wasn't until later, till we got out and my brother and I started going down the paths of our careers, that we started to realize that people were like, oh, that's really good. Oh, that's really good. And you're like, this is just what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
And then one day my dad would he'd come alongside of us and say, no, this is what leaders do, you know? And it's pretty cool to look back on that and then see the purpose in the little things that he did. You know, that's pretty neat to have. You know, I'm 55 years old now, so I got some perspective. I can look back and I can see these little lessons and how they came together to form something, you know?
Yeah.
So that was good, you know?
No, that is, so do you think if somebody isn't in an environment where that is exampled, do you think that is something that can be learned? Or as far as the, you know, being able to realize, you know, what a person needs in the moment, you know, is that something that can be learned? And if so, somebody who wasn't raised in that example as yourself, like, where would you go to for something like that?
Yeah, I think I think there's a skill set, and I'm a work in progress in this skill set, but I've found that when I do, the better I do this, the easier it is to see the right path with the things we were talking about, and that is listening. If you truly listen to the other person. So I'll give the example of work again. A guy comes to me, a leader in my team comes and sits down and talks through an issue. You need to listen and observe as you're listening, and you'll be able to start to pick up, some of the little things that, why is this person here talking to me right now? What do they need from me as a leader? What do they need from me? And so you listen and you watch them, and you can see areas when they talk about things, and you listen to the words they say, and you start to pick up, this is the area that they're not as confident in, or this is where they just want to know, is this the right way to go? Or maybe, hey, I've never faced this before. Yeah. What do you think? And so you try to, listening really is a big part of that. So you can understand where the person listening and then asking questions. You start asking, well, what do you think? Well, I think this, that, whatever. Okay. Have you ever done that before? Yeah. Has it worked? Yeah. That sounds like a good plan to me. Why don't you try it? Let me know how it works, and then come back and let's talk our way through it and try to, if it didn't work as well, we'll tweak it and do something else. But go ahead, make a decision, make it happen, And so, but I think listening will oftentimes, if you get pretty good at listening and observing people, you'll start to pick up like what they really need. And what's the right thing to do in this situation to help this person? Yeah. Because that's really what you're doing. You're serving people in a way to make them stronger at what it is that they're supposed to be doing. You're looking for ways that you can support the people around you so that they can be better. And again, it's long term. It's the easy thing for me to do often is to just tell them, okay, I faced this before. Here's what you need to do, and hand them something just on a platter. Yeah. But that's not the long term. It's not the best thing long term. So instead, it might be, hey, what do you think? Well, I think this, that, whatever. And you're thinking in your mind, okay, I've done it that way and I've faced these kinds of problems, but probably a 75% probability that it's going to work for them. Plus, they're going to go out with their idea. And if it doesn't work well right at the beginning, they're going to figure that out, and they're going to change, and they're going to make it work. And because it's their idea, they're going to be completely committed to it. And they don't want to come back to me and say, it didn't work. So they're going to learn as they do. So they're going to take that 75% probability out there. They're going to start doing it, and then they're going to learn as they do, And so, it's often, I think back on carrying the cinder blocks. Yeah. Right. The easy thing to do would be for my dad to walk over and grab 2 cinder blocks off the truck and walk over and, 2 at a time. Yeah. He'd have been done in a quarter of the time, probably. Right. But it's better to teach us some of these skills. Mm-hmm. So it's the same thing, I think, with leadership. It's the same thing with our sons and daughters as we're raising kids. It's okay, it's going to take me a little bit longer, but long term, this is best. Yeah. This is best.
Yeah. And like you're pointing out, it doesn't, whether it's fatherhood or leadership in the workplace, it's lessons that you can teach across the spectrum, no matter where you're at.
Absolutely.
Playing the long game.
Long game, man.
Yeah. It's always.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. With the Men of Grit stuff and I do and everything, we talk about, every day getting stronger in body, mind, and spirit. Every day we just get stronger body, mind, and spirit. Talk about that in FOE, and the Fraternity of Excellence. That's talked about all the time. And I've adopted that through that. It's body, mind, and spirit. And so every day you wake up, you look in the mirror and you say, okay, what am I going to do today to make me a little bit stronger in body, mind, and spirit than the guy I saw in the mirror yesterday? I'm just going to do a little bit in each area, but I'm going to do it every day, right? And move that needle a little bit every single day, And so and I don't expect that I'm going to, do some kind of workout and then I'm going to look in the mirror after the workout and say, wow, totally different.
Right.
Right.
You don't get the switch back.
No, we're long-term, man. Our mind is long-term. I'm doing this process. I'm building something for long-term. And man, as fathers, it's the same thing, man. We win in the grind. We win in the daily grind. And we don't always get it right. We don't always win. We don't always make the right decisions. But overall, what kind of example am I being? And then as we're working our way through, every so often we're like, I've been making a lot of short-term decisions. I need to make more long-term decisions. I'm going to engage him in this, engage him in that. And you're building over time. So yeah, I'm like, in my mindset, I'm like, I don't get overly upset when I fail or I don't hit the mark exactly the way I want to hit it. I just step back and say, okay, readjust. If I hit the mark well, most of the time, the result is going to be good. It's going to be good. And
right. It makes me think of what's coming up for me is like having a fighter's mind, so to speak. Like you're looking to win the war. You're not looking at the battle. Like there's battles you're going to lose, but ultimately at the end of your life, you want to be able to look back and feel like you won the war.
Yes.
And yeah,
that's the mentality. That's the mentality. Absolutely, man. It's the mentality, so, but I wanted to go back to something we talked about because I wrote an article on this, and there's such a great lesson, I think, for fathers. I talked about three things that my dad did, and one of them we talked about it is the importance of, when my dad passed, I wrote this article because I look back and I saw the wisdom in the way my dad was as a father, making memories, the importance of making memories, the importance of saying what most wish they had said, and then the importance of making your eternal destiny sure. And I remember those three things, and I thought those three things as a father, when you're talking long term, it's so important to put those things in place. And the one piece that I wanted to kind of zero in on, because as men, we don't always do this well, and that's the importance of saying what most wish they had said. Mm-hmm. So my dad, he made it a habit of making sure that how he felt about me and my brother, he expressed it often. Like he told us, he's like, every time we talked, before we got off the phone or whatever, hey man, I love you. I love you too, Dad. Every time. right? And it wasn't just that. It was, I want to let you know how proud I am of you and the man that you've become.
Mm-hmm.
I'm proud of you as a leader. I'm proud of you as this. I'm, you know, the husband that you are, the man of faith that you are, you know, whatever. He spoke these things into my brother and I, and we talked about it often. And, you know, you hear about people, and people often say, when someone passes away, they say, man, I wish I would have had one more conversation with them. I wish I could have said this. I never said this, but I felt it, but I never said it. Mm. Or I thought it and I never said it. Okay. And my dad got in the habit several years ago where we talked about it all the time. We said, hey, you say what you need to say, because you don't know how many days you got. Mm. And you know, and he was well aware of that. He talked about us one time. He took a yardstick out and he said, this is life. Here's where we start and here's where we end in this life. And he said, I'm about right here. I'm getting close to the end. Yeah. Right. And he told us this up at our hunting cabin. But he lived that way. He lived like knowing that there's an end to this. So I'm going to make sure I get in the right things. So he would say things, well, you know, and here's the point that drives this home. So the Sunday night that my dad went into the hospital the last time, I got the call, and he was going through a bunch of different things all at the same time. He had cancer and a bunch of other stuff going. He had COVID. He got over COVID, but then, you know, he was having pneumonia and he had some lungs things or whatever. And they were talking about that they were going to put him on a ventilator, and then they were going to put him on a ventilator. And then they were thinking that they're going to do a few things and then he'll be able to come off of it. And so they had this plan, but my brother called me on Sunday night, and it was almost like the Spirit of God in me was like, you need to go. Mm-hmm. And the story was like, oh, he's going to do this. And then, you know, they were making this plan. It was kind of a long-term plan, but I just said to my wife, I said, I got to go. I got to go down there. So I notified my boss. I said, hey, I need to get down here, and I'm on the way down. And they're talking about that, you know, my brother's like, well, I'm talking to him on the way down. I said, hey, I'm going straight to the hospital. And he said, well, you know, they got restrictions. They don't know if they're going to let you in or whatever, or this, that, whatever. And I told my brother, I said, well, look, man, one of two things are going to happen. They're either going to let me in, I said, or I'm going to be on the news tonight. I said, because I'm getting in that hospital. Right. And so we hang up. He's making a couple calls. He calls me back and says, hey, we got it all clear. You're good to go. And I said, all right, that's cool. That'll make it easier. You know, so off I go, and I go in there, you know. Well, by the time I got in there, he's on the ventilator and he's unconscious. Mm-hmm. So I never got to talk to him again. The next night is when he passed. But I stood there, just me in the room. I had hold of his hand, and I was able to tell my dad, I was like, you know, they didn't know that he could hear me or not. And I remember standing there, I told him a bunch of things, but one of the things that I told him was, I said, Dad, I don't know if you can hear me. But, you know, if this is your time, then, you know, you got everything squared away. We're all good. Bill and I got everything. You know, he remarried. Her name's Judy, and she's good to go, and everything's ready to go. If it's your time to go, don't hold back. If you want to go, you go. Right. And then I told him, I said, we have said everything that needs to be said. I know how you feel about me. You've told me over and over and over again. And you know how I feel about you and how much I love you and how much you have, the way you've been a father has made it easy for me to understand the Heavenly Father. That relationship has enabled me to easily become a man of faith and accept Jesus Christ as my Lord and Savior, because I understood when I read about the Father, God the Father in the scriptures, and I read about his love and his care and how he's a protector and how he's all these things, a warrior and all that stuff. It was easy for me to understand because I saw it in my own father. Mm-hmm. And I told him there by the bed, I said, I don't know if you can hear me or not. But at the end of the day, we've said all the things, like there's nothing left to be said. We've said it all. And I know how you feel about me. You know, and you know how I feel about you. And I told him all the stuff all over again. I told him how much I loved him. I told him all that stuff. And so that's what I tell fathers, you know, it matters what we do. Our example is absolutely critical. And that example demonstrates whether or not we really truly love our children or not. Like if we really love our children, we will do what we got to do to become the best men we can be for them. Mm-hmm. Because we are the example, and that example pays off. But we will also say how we feel about them. My dad used to tell me, like, I was never the most athletic. I was never the guy that was like going to be the all-star on all the teams and stuff. I made the all-stars. But what he told me is he told me this. He said, you will outwork anyone. You don't give up. You work hard. And he said, if you put your mind to something, you will work harder than anyone else. Now, when he told me that, I don't know if that was true or not, but he told me that so many times that it became true.
Yeah.
A father's words are very powerful. Telling sons, I love you. Telling sons the things we appreciate about them, the character things, when they display character and all those things that are important, the values of life. We need to speak those things into our kids because they make a difference above what everybody else says. What a father says matters. Same thing with a mother, but here we're talking about fathers, right? What a father says matters. And it's either good or for bad. And it will set the path for our children for life. And so that was an important lesson. It was a lesson I want to make sure that I talked about here is, you know, say what most wish they had said. Say it. Don't hold back, man.
Yeah. Just want to take all that in. That's a huge critical lesson. Thank you for, you know, sharing that moment in your life. Obviously a very important moment in your life, and being willing to share that and turn that into a lesson for everyone listening.
You bet.
I really don't, I think that's the best place to end it. One thing I do at the end, I ask every guest is, you know, how would you define a Hall of Fame father?
Hall of Fame father is, I think first and foremost, is a man that's good at being a man. Be a good man. Our example makes all the difference. If you try to teach lessons and you're not what it is that you're teaching, it's not going to be strong. A Hall of Fame father lives the lessons. That's what I would say.
I'm not going to say anymore. We're just going to leave it at that, Jared.
I appreciate it, Steve.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation, and really appreciate your time and the lesson shared, and maybe we can do a round 2.
Absolutely. Anytime, man. I appreciate it.
All right, brother. Have a great day.
Thanks.
We'll talk to you.
You too. See you.